Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first CAQH Core Town Hall for 2018. My name is Jessica Porras, and I'm the Senior Manager for Education and Outreach here at CAQH Core. I would like to mention a few logistical items. You'll be able to download a copy of today's presentation from the caqh.org website tomorrow. Also, a copy of the slides and the webinar recording will be emailed to you in the next day or so. Let me say that again. The slides will be available tomorrow. For today, please follow along with us using GoToWebinar. We will save time at the end of today's program to respond to your questions. I encourage you to submit your questions at any time during the webinar by typing them into the questions panel on your dashboard. We have a lot to cover during this town hall. We will start off with a CAQH Core overview, followed by a federal activity update. We will then share the latest on our voluntary work, including attachments, prior authorization, and value-based payments. And we will round out our presentations with updates on our mandated work, such as our voluntary core certification program, as well as the Phase 3 CAQH Core maintenance activities for code combinations. So let's get started. I would like to introduce our first speaker, CAQH Core Director, Robert Bowman. Bob?
Thank you, Jessica, and good afternoon. We do want to provide you with a great update that we have on a number of different topics around the work that we're doing so far this year and through the rest of the year. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that we do have to make sure that we level set for all the new folks that have joined the call. We had a great turnout and response in our registration and the folks that are attending today. So CAQH Core is a mission and vision driven organization. Using our integrated model from research and development of rules to building awareness to promoting adoption and maintaining and updating those rules and every step in between, we are the organization that develops and creates operating rules based on existing standards to help the industry achieve interoperability. And doing that, and the way that we do that is we facilitate the conversation. We bring everyone around the table to ensure that everyone has a voice. We listen to the issues and problems that are occurring in the industry, and we make very specific rules and processes put in place to adopt those rules to ensure that the industry makes progress. That is really helped and fostered by our multi-stakeholder board, and that board is aligned with the industry. There are the equal number of provider and health plan organizations, as well as a number of associations that support both the providers, the health plans, and the vendor community. On the next slide, you'll see that as we move forward throughout the year and in the previous years, we've actually attained very specific numbers that we are proud of. That includes we have 130 participating organizations, again, many of the larger health plans and the smaller health plans, the provider organizations and individual providers even, as well as clearinghouses and software vendors. So those four stakeholder groups come together to help develop the operating rule. And we have developed 4 phases of operating rules to date, 3 of which have been mandated for federal adoption, and those include phases 1, 2, and 3, the first 3 phases. The phase 4 being a phase of operating rules that are been designated for voluntary adoption. We have obtained and issued 330 core certification seals to the industry participants. And those industry participants have proven through core certification testing that they have completed for either phases 1, 2, 3, and or 4 along the way, that they are in compliance and support those operating rules. On the next slide, you'll see that as we have also talked about our numbers, it's something important to note that as we move forward, we are continuing our work as a designated rule, operating rule authoring entity. Again, with the work that we've done on the previous 4 phases, that work is continuing in our future phases. We'll have an update for you a little bit later on what that work entails in just a moment. But again, that recommendation from NCHS, the designation by HHS, allows us to look at the industry that we're in and ensure that we are making progress towards the interoperability. So we are continuing that work through our role as the HHS designated operating rule authoring entity. On the next slide, you'll see that we do want to call out a couple things that we think that are very important, and that is that the operating rules, because the industry has continues to grow, the ability to share large quantities of data has to be done very quickly and very accurately. And that data goes both from the provider to the health plan and from the health plan to the provider with the intermediaries in between. And so the use of the operating rules along with specific standards helps to do that in a much more efficient, quicker, more cost-efficient way. So for over a decade, we've been working with our stakeholder groups and with our core participants to develop the operating rules. So you see some of the transactions that we've built operating rules around, both for eligibility, claim status, EFT, the 835 or the remittance advice, as well as into phase 4 with claims and referrals and authorizations. Some key components of the entire kind of HIPAA mandated transactions. We're also looking at, and part of our goal is to dig deeper into some of the transactions in phase 4, which includes the referral authorization, as well as the health claims attachments transactions, things that we will be working on. Again, we'll provide you with an update shortly. With that, I'll hand the call over to Erin for our federal update.
Thanks, Bob. There is a lot of activity. Oh, I guess I'll introduce myself first. This is Erin Weber. I'm the CAQH Core Director along with Bob. We wanted to share a couple updates of things happening at the federal level, both directly related to the mandated operating rules and then other items of interest related to the industry that we all work in. So we'll start on slide 11. To give a bit of an update, Bob just mentioned attachments on where the industry is with an attachment standard. To date, no HIPAA standard has been named for electronic attachments. And the 2016 CAQH Index Report, which tracks industry adoption of the HIPAA mandated transactions, found that only about 6% of healthcare claim attachments are being submitted to health plans electronically, and the remainder are sent via fax or mail. The index estimates that there's an opportunity for the industry to save over $500 million here by adopting an electronic method. So the exciting news is that back in December, HHS released its unified agenda, and on that agenda, they shared that they are expecting to release a notice of proposed rulemaking for an attachment standard in August of 2018. So the unified agenda really gives a preview of an agency's plans for releasing regulations for comment. And so the attachment standards was on here again for August. So if an NPRM is released in August, it would be followed by an industry comment period, and then a final rule would be put out. So this is exciting news for the industry. CORE has continued to do a lot of work in preparing for the release of an attachment standard, and Bob's going to share more on that work later. Slide 12, another item that we mentioned in our December town hall, but we wanted to reinforce today, given its overall importance, was on the topic of compliance. And back in October of this past year, HHS did publish a notice withdrawing a January 2014 NPRM related to health plan certification of compliance with the HIPAA mandated standards and operating rules. So health plans still must comply with the standards and operating rules, but at this time it does not look like HHS will be developing a certification program. At the end of November, CMS did release an announcement that they will be pursuing proactive compliance reviews of health plans and clearinghouses for compliance with the administrative simplification standards, code sets, unique identifiers, and the operating rules. They noted that this proactive approach implements a progressive penalty process with a goal of remediation. However, the full array of enforcement actions are possible, including financial penalties. So as a first step, CMS did share that they are going to be conducting a pilot program early this year to inform the rollout of a broader administrative simplification optimization program. So wanted to highlight that effort again for you all to be aware of. In addition to the activities that I just mentioned that are really directly related to the operating rules, there's a couple federal advisory committees whose work I want to highlight, beginning on slide 14. The National Committee on Vital and Health Statistics is the advisory body to the Secretary of HHS in the area of HIPAA and including these standards and operating rules. So the committee met in January, and they have been working to establish a predictable schedule for the industry of when updates to the HIPAA standards and operating rules will occur to help the market prepare for changes. So they have identified 5 key objectives to this work, which are included on this slide, and I know that there's more information on their website. As part of this work effort, they are planning to hold a Chief Information Officer Forum probably at the end of Q2 or early Q3 to solicit input from a diverse group of Chief Information Officers who are really the end users of the standards and operating rules to help inform their predictability roadmap objectives. So they are in the process of planning for that effort and using that effort to develop detailed recommendations for the predictability roadmap. And then on slide 15, we wanted to highlight some work being done by the Office of the National Coordinator, which is the federal entity charged with coordination of national health information technology efforts. The 21st Century Cures Act developed a new federal advisory committee, which is really subsuming 2 existing committees called the Health IT Advisory Committee. This committee did hold its first meeting on January 18th of this year, and the agenda really covered key items from the Cures Act and updates from the ONC office. The other important item that has come out of ONC recently is the Draft Trusted Exchange Framework and Common Agreement. And this is a work effort that aims to create a technical and governance infrastructure to connect health information networks together through a core of qualified health information networks. Industry comments on the draft TEPCA are due by February 20th, 2018. And TEPCA really proposes policies, procedures, and technical standards necessary to advance what is essentially a single on-ramp for interoperability between these various networks. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bob to talk more about CORE's voluntary efforts to drive value. And I hope that federal update was helpful.
Great, thanks, Erin. And we do have several efforts that we want to update you on as well in related to the work that we're doing right now. The first is attachments. We have started our attachments project. And again, with the update on the next slide, you'll see that we are hoping to develop a set of operating rules around attachments and both the different types of attachments that you hear throughout the industry between prior authorizations and claims attachments, as well as attachments required for auditing purposes, as well as kind of post-adjudication or other types of post-adjudication types attachments as well. So again, we are monitoring the trends within the industry of what's going on and who's doing what, and the movement forward with potential of adoption of official standards either by HHS as well as what the industry is doing on their own. Again, CAQH Core started out as a voluntary effort, and we are still a voluntary effort related to making and ensuring we can extend the value of the use of standard transactions, whether mandated or not. So again, we are part of our environmental scan does include interviewing core participants, looking at the CAQH index participating providers and interviewing them. It also includes provider site visits. So we are flying around the country to talk with providers and how they're conducting transactions in a standard way or a non-standard way when it comes to attachments, as well as looking at the vendor products that are out in the marketplace and how they're used and what transactions they use and how they connect with health plans and with providers. Part of that environmental scan will help inform the work that an advisory group will do, and we hope to chair the advisory group in the second quarter of this year, and they will help us define exactly what the environmental scan findings are. And that will lead into the work that a subgroup will do a little bit later this year as they identify very specific issues and challenges that rule writing can help address. Again, another part of that environmental scan that's been very important and actually very well received by the industry is our industry education series. We've now had 4 parts. Our last presentation was just 2 weeks ago in January, where we've worked with a number of entities throughout the industry as part of our guest speaker series. They've come on and shared their experiences with attachments and how they've implemented best practices and how they've looked at specific data within the transactions and what data they need and how that flows from the provider to the health plan back to the provider in the way of positive claims payment. Again, the 4-part series is one of the most highly regarded series that we've held. We've had the most attendance and of any of our series that we've held for attachment, so it's been quite popular. All of the links are here on this slide. If you want to go back and listen to those or download the slides, they're all available for free on our website. With that, we're going to hand the call back over to Rachel Goldstein, who is a manager for our prior authorization project, and she'll provide us an update on the work that is going on in that project. Rachel?
Thanks, Bob. Hi there, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. I will give a quick update on our prior authorization efforts. And since we have quite a few folks on the call today, I think we'll start from the top. This is an introductory slide on some of CORE's work and our vision on prior authorization. As you probably know, prior authorization seeks to manage healthcare utilization by requiring approval for certain medical services and prescriptions. And the process is quite burdensome for stakeholders, providers, health plans, and especially patients. CORE's vision for prior authorization at the top of the slide here is to introduce targeted change to propel the industry collectively forward to a PA process that is more efficient by automation, which will reduce burden on providers and health plans and ultimately improve that timely delivery of patient care. The Phase 4 CAQH core operating rules established critical infrastructure requirements for electronic information exchange related to PA requests and responses. You'll see on the right-hand side here that the rules set expectations on response time, acknowledgement of receipt of the request, real-time and batch processing requirements, amongst some other foundational requirements. This was an incremental step for the industry and offers real implementable system improvements. Given strong core participant interest, support from our board, and CAQH's recommendation to build some additional prior authorization operating rules, and significant interest from the industry, CAQH core is now working on building on the basics that were established with the Phase 4 rules. On the next slide, you'll see a summary of CAQH core's work effort on prior authorization since the Phase 4 rules I just described. You'll see that last year, we launched a multi-stakeholder advisory group with the goal of identifying high-priority opportunity areas for potential operating rules. The advisory group kicked off by reviewing a draft list of potential opportunity areas compiled by CAQH core staff. The advisory group then conducted an environmental scan similar to the one that Bob just described for our attachments effort to identify barriers to adoption of electronic prior authorization methods and overall pain points with the process. Finally, with support from the advisory group, CORE narrowed down the list of potential opportunity areas by applying our knowledge from the environmental scan findings and funneling the opportunity areas through rigorous evaluation criteria. The opportunities that rose to the top were sent on to the prior authorization subgroup for further consideration. This subgroup launched in October 2017 and is currently underway. I'll talk more about the top opportunities on the next slide. You'll see the top 6 opportunities here in the white boxes. They fall into 3 buckets. Data content on the left, attachments or additional documentation in the middle, and research on potential best practice workflows on the right. CAQH core is taking an incremental approach to pursuing these buckets. Currently, the prior authorization subgroup is focused on identifying potential rule options for the data content opportunity areas you see on the far left box. Further research on the attachments-related opportunity areas in the middle section will be incorporated into our overall attachments initiative, which Bob talked about earlier. Finally, our workflows-related opportunity areas on the far right will need additional research to be completed by CAQH core staff and further considered later in 2018. The PA subgroup is currently refining potential rule options to pursue robust data content for the X12 278. The rule option categories are listed here on this slide. They all address issues pertaining to a health plan receiving the information they need to adjudicate a PA request, or to a provider receiving a response back that provides clear next steps on how to get their PA request approved. Specifically, some of the options relate to ways to reduce the amount of errors that are sent back to providers, which result in sends and denials of the request due to challenges with provider identification, patient identification, and procedure and diagnosis codes. In addition, the subgroup is considering rule options related to healthcare services review decision reason codes and AAA reject reason codes in order to enhance communication regarding reasons for pend and denial. Following selection of rule options, the subgroup will begin to draft the rules. We utilize straw polls along the way to obtain feedback and gain consensus to move forward through our milestones and get to the draft rules. Our next call is this Thursday, February 8th, 2018, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If your organization is impacted by challenges surrounding prior authorization, we certainly encourage your participation in the subgroup, especially now as we develop rules. I'll now pass it on to Jessica for a related polling question.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I know that this audience is really interested in this topic, so I really appreciate the summary that you just gave us. So it is time to take a pause and get some feedback from our audience. As you know, our work is multi-stakeholder and we value various points of view. So our first polling question is to try to get a feel from work that you might be interested in participating in. So the question is a check all that apply, and it's focused on our work on prior authorization and attachments and how you would like to be involved. So for the first option is, yes, I would like to participate in the attachments environmental scan, and that option is open to everybody. The second option is I would like to present a prior authorization or attachments case study during one of our webinars. Again, if you have a story to tell, we would like to hear it. Option 3 is I would like to participate in the prior authorization subgroup. This is a core participant benefit. So if you're a core participant, please check this box. And if you would like to be a core participant, you know how to reach us. The same for option 4, which is, yes, I would like to participate in the attachments advisory group. That is a benefit for core participants only. And the 5th option is not at this time. I'm still thinking about it. So let's launch the poll. Give this a couple of seconds. And this information will be helpful to us. We may use some of these answers to reach back out to you if you're interested in participating in either the attachments environmental scan, participating in one of our webinars, or the various subgroups and advisory groups. Okay, so I think we can close this poll, and this is information we'll keep for ourselves. So thank you so much for giving us your feedback. So now our next presentation will focus on our work on value-based payments, once again led by CAQH Core Director Erin Weber. Erin, take it away.
Great, thanks, Jessica. I'm excited to share with you some updates on our work in the area of value-based payments. And I want to pause to give a little bit of history and background about this new area of focus for CORE. For those of you that have been working and engaged with CORE for a long time, you'll recall that CORE was founded by a multi-stakeholder collaborative back in 2005 to address some of the lack of uniformity with implementation of the HIPAA standards that were really making it difficult for the industry to automate use of the transactions. You know, over time, many of these standards have been automated. We've been tracking that in the CAQH index. And now we're seeing the industry make this shift from fee-for-service to value-based payments. And you know, you can see some of the data here. It's anticipated that more than half of healthcare payments will be value-based by 2020. And the CAQH core board, which is multi-stakeholder, recognized the importance of this emerging approach. They're feeling it at their own organizations. But we're also observing some challenges as VBP is implemented across the industry that are similar to some of the challenges we saw back when CORE was first founded with fee-for-service. You know, in particular, proprietary systems and processes implementing VBP have introduced operational variations. You know, each model is a little bit different and each is implemented in a slightly different way. The volume to value transformation is at risk for slowing down if providers encounter barriers that make participation burdensome. So there's a real need for an efficient, uniform operational system to support value-based payments. And I think one of the lessons we learned from fee-for-service is that it's important to collaborate now, prospectively, to coordinate operations early before these proprietary systems and processes become entrenched in value-based payments. So over the past 18 months or so, CORE has been conducting quite a bit of research, interviewing various stakeholders, working on VBP issues. We've conducted surveys of the CORE participants. We've surveyed you all in town hall calls. And all of this research has culminated in the development of a report looking at opportunities to standardize some of the operational challenges within value-based payments. The success of VBP is fundamentally dependent upon smooth and reliable business transactions between all stakeholders, not that different from fee-for-service. And investments in these methods are really important now to ensure consistent expectations and rules of the road related to value-based payment. So the report, which we will be releasing at the end of March, although planning to give CORE participants a preview on a webinar later this month, outlines 5 opportunity areas for the industry where there are operational challenges that may be ripe for the industry to collaborate around addressing. It includes 9 recommendations related to these challenges for industry to come together. And it identifies about 12 candidate organizations and different stakeholders who are really in the right place to help propel some of these challenges forward and address some of these challenges. So in some areas, CORE may take the lead. In other areas, there are other organizations that are better suited, but the key is identifying some of these challenges and addressing them now before we get too far down the path of industry implementation. Some of the challenges that I'm referring to from an operational perspective are outlined on slide 28. You know, data harmonization and standardization is one that we heard throughout the research, and there's different components of that. Missing and inaccurate data, inconsistent use of terms, lack of specificity are all things that are challenging the implementation of value-based payments. I probably don't need to talk much about interoperability challenges with this crowd, but making sure that those involved have the right information at the right time to successfully implement these models. Patient risk stratification and risk assessment, provider attribution, making sure that the right data is being collected and used, and that there's transparency in some of these models to assist with successful implementation. And finally, one area I think that is very hard to ignore when you're talking about value-based payments is quality measurement. We heard time and time again from the research participants on the challenges of an overabundance of quality measures and lack of uniformity in how they are used, particularly from the provider perspective. So those are some of the challenges that are addressed and included in the report. Slide 29 lays out our timeline for the value-based report and other work that CORE is doing. I mentioned before, we have conducted a significant amount of research, and we're really right now in stage 3, moving into stage 4. We have been doing a value-based payments webinar series. We've completed 2 webinars, and we have another one scheduled for next month, hoping to understand some of the challenges that were outlined in the last page and educate the industry on where we are. In addition to this, we are in the process, as I mentioned, of finalizing our report, and a preview of that report will be shared with CORE participants on a webinar this month, and then the full report will be released at the end of March, early April. We plan to also continue our education series and then launch an advisory group, again, of individuals from CORE participating organizations who have depth and breadth of experience in value-based payments implementation to help guide CORE's work in this area and identify which of the opportunity areas in the report and which of the strategies really make sense for CORE to take on or partner with other organizations to help move the industry forward. If you're interested in getting involved in this initiative, we are always interested in hearing your feedback and thoughts, so you can reach out to me or email core@caqh.org, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Taha Anjarwalla, who is our CORE Certification Manager, to give a quick update on CORE certification. Taha?
Thanks, Erin. Good afternoon, everyone. So today I'll be providing you all with an overview of the certification program. Then I'll be walking through the impact CORE certification has on the industry. And finally, we'll provide you with some insight on how your organization can prepare for the federal compliance reviews and audits that Erin mentioned earlier in today's presentation. Next slide. So as a program, CORE certification is really the gold standard in how a certification program should be developed and administered. And this slide outlines the elements that make CORE certification stand out. The certification program is a multi-stakeholder, collaborative, and industry-driven effort that provides benefits from both industry and an organizational perspective. From an industry perspective, the elements of the certification program, the actual testing elements needed for organizations to demonstrate conformance to the operating rules, were developed by industry through a multi-stakeholder group of industry representatives through a transparent process. These requirements of the certification program were then put through a thorough review and voting process, same process that the CORE operating rules go through. And so CORE certification is the industry deciding for itself what conformance to the operating rules actually mean. Another great benefit of the certification program is that each certification phase builds off the other. So as you implement and certify on one phase of the operating rules, you can leverage your past efforts and implement and certify on future phases of the CORE rules. Lastly, another key benefit we hear from organizations as to why they pursue certification is to assure conformance with rules and standards. The value of the CORE seal gives confidence to organizations that have gone through an industry-driven, comprehensive, non-biased, and independent process to assure adherence to the operating rules and underlying standards. Further, as the gold standard, we are constantly looking at ways to evolve the certification program. We recently completed an environmental scan at the end of last year, examining 9 different certification programs offered across the health IT landscape, and now we are working to align industry best practices found as a result of this assessment to further advance the certification program. The next slide. So we're happy to announce that we have awarded a total of 333 CORE seals to date, with the most recent certifications including Humana, WorkComp EDI, Delta Dental of California, Texas Medicaid, Pocket Doc, and National Association of Letter Carriers. Congrats to these organizations, and some of these are actually our Phase 4 pioneers who have been the first organizations to be awarded Phase 4. And we have a lot more organizations in our pipeline for this year, and if you're interested in learning more to become certified, feel free to reach out to us. Additionally, in looking at the impact core certification has on the nation's healthcare system and measuring the amount of covered lives that benefit from certification, for the phase 1 and 2 operating rules, which cover the eligibility and claim status transactions, 76% of commercially insured and 44% of publicly insured lives are covered by core certified health plans. And for phase 3, we see adoption growing with 27% of the commercially insured and 25% of the publicly insured are covered by certified plans. The data reflects the momentum of certifications in the industry and the increased commitment and collaboration of stakeholders in healthcare to effectively share electronic data in secure and meaningful ways. If you want to move on to the next slide. As I highlighted before, many of the reasons why an entity gets core certified is based on the idea that there is an objective third-party testing proving that your organization is conforming to the operating rules and standards as they are meant to be. So certification testing and the issuance of the core seals helps give organizations assurance that they comply with federally mandated operating rules and standards and allow their organizations to feel confident in the event of an audit. So it's kind of like using TurboTax or going to H&R Block to help you file and submit your taxes. It's good practice to find somebody outside of your organization to check your work and make sure you did it right. And core certification is that kind of check and balance for the operating rules and standards. Certification helps organizations prepare for potential compliance reviews and audits through its comprehensive testing and application process. And it's very rigorous and very comprehensive. And core certification is positioned to help organizations assess and validate operating rules and standard implementation and preparation for the HHS Administrative Simplification Program compliance reviews, again, which were mentioned earlier in today's presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica for our next polling question.
Thank you so much, Taha. So the next polling question, we want to get a little bit of information of where you all are, our audience, in thinking about voluntary core certification. So let's go ahead and launch the poll and I'll walk through the options. So the first option is yes, we're thinking about it or planning for it. And if you find yourself in a situation where you need more information, please feel free to contact us. Second option is we're already core certified. Third option is unsure or need more information. You know how to reach us. And then the fourth and fifth options are not at this time or not applicable. And the differentiation there is not at this time, maybe that you haven't budgeted for certification at this time, whereas not applicable maybe because you're not a HIPAA covered entity, for example. And this information will help us in our planning efforts in 2018. So again, we won't share this information, but it is very helpful to us. And now, for our next presentation, we will have an update on our maintenance efforts on the core code combination. I'd like to introduce CAQH Core Senior Associate, Helena Geber-Mariam. Lena?
Thanks, Jessica. Good afternoon, everyone. On these next few slides, we're going to drill down into our mandated operating rule maintenance work, particularly the maintenance of the core code combinations. On slide 36, CAQH Core is responsible for maintaining the core code combinations created and mandated by the Phase 3 CAQH Core 360 rule. This rule addresses the many codes health plans send to providers to explain a claim denial or adjustment via the 835 ERA transaction. Between the claim adjustment reason codes, the remittance advice remark codes, and the claim adjustment group codes, there are 3 different code sets that health plans use to provide this information. Moving on to the next slide, we see the industry determined that we needed code combinations as there was lots of confusion within the larger healthcare industry regarding these code sets. Specifically, providers were not receiving uniform and consistent CARC and MERC and group codes from the health plans they were billing. This would necessitate providers or their administrative staff to pick up the phone for clarification from the plan. Providers were also having challenges understanding the hundreds of code combinations that were coming in. Each health plan had their own proprietary codes that they were using, as well as their own proprietary business scenarios and internal processes they were using to match and generate these code combinations. So the decisions on the CARCs and marks used to explain the reason for a claim denial or adjustment were left to each individual health plan, which led to lots of variation and confusion for providers who would then need to spend time manually following up with the health plan to understand their code sets. Finally, the CARC and work code sets are updated 3 times per year, so many plan and provider systems were not using those current code sets, and we're continuing to use deactivated codes. In order to address these challenges, CAQH Core created the core code combination, and in 2014, the implementation was mandated for HIPAA-covered entities who use the 835 transaction. As seen on slide 38, to ensure industry alignment and that the code sets are evolving with industry needs, CAQH Core has a very regimented core code combinations maintenance process. Every time the standard code lists are updated by those code committees, which occurs 3 times per year, we complete a compliance-based review. Once the updated lists are published, the core code combination task group gets involved and goes through the maintenance process to evaluate the new, deactivated, and modified codes and reach consensus on any recommended corresponding modification to the core code combination. Again, this occurs 3 times per year. In conjunction with our compliance-based reviews, we also take into consideration industry needs through our market-based review once a year. This cycle kicked off on December 20th of 2017. The market-based review allows the stakeholders to look at the current code combinations to see if they are meeting our current business needs. Moving on to slide 39, we'll dive a little deeper into the market-based review, or MBR. The MBR really looks to answer the questions, are the current code combinations working for you? And are there any code combinations that you would like to see added or removed based on your evolving business needs? The survey this year went out on December 20th, and everyone who uses the 835 transaction may respond. The MBR will ask you to supply how the code combinations fit in with the 4 core defined business scenarios and any kind of real-world usage data you may have. For example, if you keep on getting a certain code combination that's murky and unclear, and you have to pick up the phone and clarify with the health plan exactly what your next steps are if you want to appeal the claim, you may wish to submit that combination as removal. The MBR is open for a 60-day period and will close in about 3 weeks on March 2nd. At that point, the core code combinations task group will review submissions in accordance with our maintenance process. If you have any additional questions about the MBR, please reach out to us. And with that, I'll hand things back off to Jessica.
Thank you so much, Lena. And now we have some time for Q&A. I would like to remind you to please submit your questions by typing them into the questions panel on your dashboard. The first question is for core certification. And the question is, about how long does it take to get through a core certification process?
So certification, the time frame for certification varies depending on how your organization is ready and what sort of gaps your organization needs to fix before going through certification. On average, we find organizations spending between 2 to 6 months per phase to complete certification, and that's very depending on your preparedness for certification. We do offer a lot of free resources on our website. Of particular, there's the analysis and planning guide that helps you kind of prepare for and kind of will help you give you kind of that estimate of how long your organization may take to go through the certification process. But on average, 2 to 6 months, depending on the number of resources and how ready your systems are.
Thank you, Taha. The next question is regarding core, being a core participant. The question is, what does it mean to be a core participant? Are there additional features or benefits? Erin or Rachel, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Being a core participating organization means a couple different things. First and foremost, it means you have a seat at the table on all of the core initiatives. So everything you learned about today, from attachments to prior auth to value-based care to the code combinations maintenance, there are various groups that support that work. And any organization that is a core participant can have representatives in those groups to contribute to the rule development or moving the initiative forward. There are opportunities to be chairs of the group. Additionally, core participants often get access to additional information. For example, the VBP report webinar that I mentioned, they'll get a sneak peek to things like that. So there's quite a few different benefits to becoming a core participating organization.
Thank you so much, Erin. We do have one question about certification, and it's, do I need to be phases 1 through 3 certified before pursuing phase 4 core certification?
Yep. So The intent of certification is to build off each phase of the operating rules. So for health plans and providers, you do actually have to get certified on each subsequent phase in order to be certified, because the expectation is that health and providers do all the transactions. So you need to, each phase of the operating rules builds off each other. For vendors and clearinghouses, this is a little different, since vendors and clearinghouses offer specific products on one particular transaction. You can actually get certified on a particular phase of the operating rules that your product covers. So for example, if your product only does claims and does not do the eligibility transaction, you can get certified on phase 4 without having to complete certification for phases 1 through 3.
Thank you so much. Another question has come in asking how we work with organizations such as WEDI, how we participate in their work groups. Erin?
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. And I think that prior authorization is a good example of how the industry works together on some of these various issues. So many of you may be aware that there are a couple different industry groups. There was a provider coalition that put out some guiding principles related to prior authorization and opportunities for improvement. And additionally, WEDI has a work group looking at some best practices around prior authorization. So CORE looks at those guiding principles and identifies how our work can support those guiding principles and where there is alignment. We are participating in the WEDI prior auth group. The WEDI folks participate in ours. There's a lot of communication between the two different groups. Additionally, WEDI has convened a prior authorization work group to bring together all of the organizations working on this topic to allow communications to occur. So there's quite a bit of industry coordination occurring. The other area we work with WEDI is in education and outreach. So, for example, we are working together on a joint webinar on ESP and ERA in the next month or two.
Thank you, Erin. So we've got a question coming in regarding the HHS pilot, the compliance pilot that we referenced earlier in the presentation. And the question is, do we have any idea what the time frame might be when HHS might expand their compliance reviews for the non-pilot volunteers? Do we have any information there?
No, Jessica, CMS has not released any additional information yet about this pilot program. So as soon as we hear anything, we will update you all.
So register for the next town hall just in case there's any new information there.
Exactly.
So another question has come in regarding the health plan ID and the status of that initiative and that regulation. Have we heard anything on that beyond the NCVHS hearings on HPID? I don't think so. But again, we will make sure. Bob, do you have any insight on that? If not, we will definitely keep you posted in the next town hall.
Yeah, definitely. The health plan ID regulation, how that's tied to any sort of health plan certification, that has been withdrawn. So there is currently no regulation related to the health plan ID that's on the books anymore. So I know there was a lot of discussion and talk about that a couple years ago, and many plans worked through the process of having a health plan ID assigned to them. And that ID had potential for a variety of uses, one of which, as defined in the health plan certification NPRM, was to use that ID to track health plan certification. With the health plan certification being removed for consideration, NPRM has been removed, that wouldn't be the case. So there's more information out on our website as well as on HHS website, on CMS's website. We can point some, we have some FAQs that point to that actually on our website as well. So that might be some additional information for you.
Thank you, Bob. A question came in regarding course certification. So the person who asked the question is a vendor interested in core certification, and they're wondering whether there's a value in becoming a core participant in order to help inform future core certification phases. Can we weigh in on that one way or the other?
So with the aspect of certification, I think there's definitely value add in becoming a participant, and the reason is that certification is actually developed by the participant. So the testing, the policies for each phase of certification is developed by core participants themselves, and it's good they go through the same process as the operating rules do. So there's definitely that value add. And also as a billing company, if you do conduct and use the transactions, whether it's through you're outsourcing that to a clearinghouse or through a third-party vendor, your organization can actually become certified yourself. And we would be happy to kind of walk you through what that business case or what that process may look like. Feel free to reach out to us and be glad to kind of walk you through that process.
Thank you so much. So a question came in regarding the 278 batch versus real-time implementation. And the question is, I'm still finding use of DD is preferred. Does this align with your current experience? And this is regarding the drivers behind the 278 batch or real-time implementation. Can we provide this person any feedback? If not, I will recommend that they email our CAQH core email address, and we will try to get an answer for you.
And Bob, I'm wondering if with a reference to DD here is in reference to health plan portals and doing direct data entry on the portals. So I don't know if Bob
definitely. And for the individual that submitted the question concerning the 278s between batch, real-time, and DDE, part of our environmental scan found that there are definitely a heavy utilization of health plan web portals. So for direct data entry, still heavily used for this transaction, as well as findings from our own CAQH core index. Only about 19% of the the prior authorization transactions are conducted using the 278 transaction. So one of the least utilized HIPAA mandated transactions for sure. However, that being said, every vendor that was part of our vendor assessment does conduct the 278 transaction. They do have a tool or a product in place. And every health plan that we contacted that are part of our subgroup and our environmental scan also conducts the 278. So although they do heavily support the DDE or the direct data entry or their web portals for many of their transactions, there is an uptick and there is usage of the 278 transaction. Now we did see a dichotomy between the usage. Usually the referral is real time and the batch or is used for a prior authorization itself. So there is some I would say some growing usage of the 278, but there's still quite a heavy reliance on direct data entry, which is a manual input by the provider for every transaction.
Thank you, Bob. The next question, someone was wondering whether they were core certified. How can we help them find out, Taha?
So we list all our core certified organizations publicly on our website, so it's a fairly straightforward process to find out. So if you go to www.caqh.org and then navigate to the core certification tab on the website and then go to the core certified organizations webpage, your organization can then see, we list them out by stakeholder type of all the certified organizations from phases 1 through 4. So just go to caqh4.org and navigate to the core certified organizations webpage.
Thank you, Taha. So I think we are out of time. On the next slide is information about our upcoming webinars. And I'd like to point out that our February 22nd webinar is for CAQH core participants only. So if you do register and you're not a core participant, unfortunately, we will deregister you, but these are the types of benefits that you receive if you become a core participant.
Likely, we won't deregister you. We will reach out to you and talk to you about the benefits of core certification because we would
always welcoming more people to get involved. Great. So I would like to thank all of you for joining us. On the next slide, you will find various ways to reach out to us if you would like more information on operating rules or any of our initiatives. With that, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.